Cool. Make sure the stream's up. Maybe. There it goes. All right, cool. Team Early as Fuck podcast. We are remote with the man, Brian Frain. Brian, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Bill. How are you?
I'm kicking ass, man. It's Monday. I can't complain. It's still light outside. Beautiful day. I'm over. There was like a week and a half period where I denied that I was sick, even though like most of the people I was around on a day-to-day basis were all like ill with the plague, and I had that combined with allergies, and I just refused to admit it. But yeah, weekend 4 days of solid sleep, and just trying to take it easy, and I feel amazing today. So yeah.
That's excellent. Yes, I'm right with you. I am the king of ignoring the fact that I'm sick and claiming that I am not actually sick. Yeah, if you ask me, I've never been sick ever in my life.
That's exactly right. I feel you, man. I feel you. So with that, Brian, let's before we get too crazy here, how long do I have you for?
Well, I don't know. I got to go on a run at 5:00 tomorrow morning.
Perfect. So we'll get off right around 4:30. Give you time to brush your teeth, tie your shoes. Dude.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what do we got going on here? One sec. Bam, 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 bam. All right. I'm just trying to figure out why my stream is being weird. Other than that, we'll be ready to go.
Excellent.
So Brian, while I'm putzing with this, what last time we talked, let's do a quick reintroduction. Last time you were on, what we talked about, and then we'll do a catch up to what you've been up to.
Okay. So, yeah, let's think. The last time I was on, it was a combo podcast with both me and Annie Weiss, my wife, shortly after she finished setting the fastest known time for running the entire Ice Age Trail. You had her on to chat about that, and then I was just kind of tagging along to talk about some of the logistics and that sort of thing, because that was my role in the whole deal. Let's see. Shortly after that, I went out to Chattanooga, Tennessee to run the Chattanooga 50-miler. When I signed up for it, I knew that the bulk of my training would be taking place while Annie was doing the Ice Age run. And in my head, I thought, well, that'll be perfect because I'll be running plenty every day and, no need to get real serious about the training, which of course turned out to be a horrendous miscalculation of judgment on my part. We'll get to that though, don't worry.
We'll get there.
Yeah, let's see. So then after that, I kind of licked my wounds for a couple months and signed up for another 50-miler, which was the Ice Age 50-mile, which takes place here in southeastern Wisconsin. And I got my ass kicked in that one as well. So I'm 0 for 2 on 50-milers since we spoke the last time. And beyond that, I didn't do a whole heck of a lot other than running and coaching middle school level sports and eating a lot over the holidays, I guess.
And this was your was this your first go around in coaching middle schoolers?
It was, yes. I was helping out with my daughter's sports teams, and then this spring, actually, Annie and I are combo coaching the 7th and 8th grade girls track team, which has been a real experience, let me tell you. Have you ever had the privilege of coaching middle school kids?
I do. I coach them in the gym setting.
Okay. All right.
So it's much more controlled and not as crazy as like a sports team.
The thing that I have found to be most fascinating is how many kids go out for sports purely because their friends go out for sports, and they have no interest whatsoever in actually participating in the sport, and certainly no interest in getting better at the sport.
Correct.
So they, yeah, it's really interesting to have a team of 25 kids where there's 3 or 4 of them are extremely talented and will do exactly what you say, and then there's 3 or 4 that maybe aren't quite as talented but will still work really hard, and then all the rest of them are just running around in circles chasing butterflies and tripping over their own feet.
This is true.
And the other thing that I find, and I don't know if you see this in the gym, and maybe this is one of those things where it was, kind of, back in my day, this is how we did things. I don't remember being so blatantly disrespectful and whiny to my coaches when I was at that age, where it's like, okay, we're gonna do 500-meter sprints, and there's kids are just you've asked them to run 1,000 miles, or or some of them are just like, well, I just don't want to.
Yeah.
Well, and I have taken kind of the approach with these kids that it's kind of unfortunate, but I just basically have told the ones that whine a lot, I don't care if you're here or not. I don't care if you get better or not. But the only way you're going to get better is by listening to me and, doing the workouts. If you're fine with starting the season and finishing the season and being in the exact same shape, I can't force you to do anything,
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I haven't gotten any angry emails from any parents yet, which partly leads me to believe that I'm not pushing hard enough. But last week on one of the warm days, we did have a kid who essentially had a panic attack in the middle of a 400-meter dash in practice because we were pushing her a little bit too hard, apparently. So,
well, I mean,
trying to find the boundaries, I guess.
You're gonna have that. That means you're doing it right. At least I think.
All right. Exactly. The kids are always telling you oh, I feel like I'm going to throw up. And it's like, well, if you do throw up, that means that you actually pushed as hard as you could. Until you throw up, I know you have something left in the tank. All right.
But
anyway,
completely agree. And yeah, a couple of those points. There's definitely moments. There's certain athletes or kids that kind of you come in and I think we're going through it. Kind of talked about this on a previous podcast, but talking about environment. So there's some parents, maybe their parents. So current day parents, their parents weren't maybe as supportive as they would have liked their parents to be, or maybe they had bad relationships with their parents. So I think they're kind of bouncing to the far end of the spectrum where they're trying to be super supportive, almost too supportive, and afraid to crack down or be the bad guy in some instances, or they're just so caught up in their own lives they're not as involved in their child's attitude, or maybe how they're the discipline, I guess, isn't quite maybe what it used to be, because it was so normal for kids to be slapped around, or I don't want to say beaten, but physical discipline was definitely it was more commonplace. So I think it's just kind of the opposite end of the spectrum happening for good and bad, because there's definitely some a lot of the, well, and I guess I think too right now I'm my position is a little bit more the kids for the most part they enjoy it. they like coming there, even when there's days I'm pushing them or I'm like the drill instructor, just because of um, how much uh, how much maybe their parents are paying for the service. So I think that definitely
Sure.
plays a part in it too. But yeah, I know. No, I definitely understand where you're coming from when it comes to just the rudeness. That's like my biggest pet peeve. I was just talking to a couple parents about this. Like, I can deal with the kid bouncing off the wall. I can deal with the craziness, the not being able to concentrate. It's when they're rude to each other or the other coaches or me. It's just like, we can't have this. So that's usually
Right.
when I got to crack down on some kids. But yeah, man, it's
Yeah,
that age group is interesting.
I would definitely I would agree with you as far as uh, I mean, even speaking from my own experience, I definitely fall into that camp of um, my parents were wrapped up in their stuff when I was seventh, eighth grade, and into high school, and um, my mom like came to the events that she could, and all that sort of thing, like in between work and everything, and so I have definitely, I guess, gone to the other end of the spectrum, to kind of, I guess, make up. I don't want my daughter to feel the way that I felt, when you look up in the stands and everybody's parents are there except yours and all that sort of thing. Like that's a shitty feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it definitely leads to, I think, honestly, I think that's part of the problem as far as with some of the attitude that I get is because all the kids that I'm coaching are, my daughter's friends. And so they've been to our house and, we've seen them at events and they know that I'm generally a pretty, easygoing, fun person. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, it's track time and now he's serious, but I don't know how to take him seriously because he's never serious because I really never am. But yeah, that I definitely hear your point there. The other thing that I think you hit on that Annie and I have experienced, your kids want to be there by and large, like you said, their parents are paying for it, and there's that sort of commitment. So when Annie and I signed up to coach, we thought, okay, well, we'll do the distance kids and the sprinter kids.
Yep.
So on the first day of practice, Annie says, okay, who here, likes to run distance? And like, 5 or 6 girls raise their hand, and she's like, okay, I'll go with you guys. And everybody else is, with me. Well, you think about it, at seventh and eighth grade, nobody at that age likes running distance. So the people who volunteer to run distance are the few that do like running it.
Mm-hmm.
So she's essentially coaching the athletes that you have. She's coaching the kids that want to be there. Like, first practice, they're like, running ladder drills and they're all in perfect sync and they've all got their shirts tucked in and everything. And meanwhile, I've got this, herd of feral cats running around the track. Nobody knows what the hell is going on. And Andy's just like, well, yeah, I don't have any problems with the kids. I don't know. They all listen to me. And it's like, God damn it.
Yep.
So yeah, there's definitely some of that going on. That's for sure. It's an extremely different group than in the fall. I was kind of freelance coaching a cross country team in the Milwaukee area. Their head coach was a guy who was my running coach. And I had been thinking about, maybe getting into some coaching as far as, like working with kids or whatever. And I contacted him and said, hey, I know you, like, I'm not expecting any money or anything, but like, could I help you coach and just kind of see what you do and, kind of learn the ropes or whatever? And he was all for it. So
Yeah.
what I learned is at the high school level, those kids, even the ones who don't particularly want to be there, because, cross country, at least around here, cross country is the no cut sport. So the kids, you end up with some kids who maybe go out for the volleyball team or go out for basketball or whatever and get cut. So they end up in cross country because they have to do a fall sport. At that age, they're smart enough to know that you start fucking around after you get away from school and after you get away from the coaches. So like there were times where, you know, like girls would, okay, yeah, we're going to go out on our 4-mile run. And then, you know, somebody would be late and I'll be like, okay, I'll run with you until we get a half a mile away from school. And you'd see 3 or 4 kids, you know, literally sitting on the curb, you know, talking with each other. It's like, oh, yeah, you girls are really getting after it today, aren't you?
Pushing
like,
ourselves.
Again, it's like the ostrich thing, you know, they're away from the school. So at that point, none of us actually know unless we happen to catch them. But the middle school kids haven't picked up on that little cheat yet. So they're just insubordinate right to your face.
They're like, no. Yeah, I never even thought about that. Like, that was something I experienced even at the university level was working with athletes, and you know, they're collegiate athletes, and you turn your back and you don't, and then you look back real quick and you see that they're slacking, and it's like, well, what are you doing? Like, why are you wasting your time with, you know, half-assed training when it's like, especially at that level, you signed up for it, you're here to play. So that, yeah, right. I don't understand that kind of mentality, and I never even thought of it at the high school level, or because once again in my setting, it's like I'm there hovering over them for the hour. But yeah, you give them a little autonomy, and right away they get a little lazy. So where do you think that's coming from?
What's that?
Where do you think that's like, why do you think that is? I wasn't in cross country when I was definitely not a runner, but there's a book written by a longtime cross country coach here in town, the Animals Keepers. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I have not. No,
highly recommend you checking that book out. I'll put it in the show notes as well. But yeah, cool. Just like the stories this coach has, and it was just like, yeah, here's the workout, and that's kind of always how I've assumed cross country and track were. But you know, everyone's motivated. They're there to run. They're there to push themselves, get better. So here's the workout. Group up, go out, get it done, and it's blowing my mind. You're like, yeah, I go a block down the road, and they're just sitting there on the sidewalk. So I'm assuming that's happening more than once.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, you ask, where does that come from?
Yep.
The head coach and I have talked extensively about it, and you just wonder because you see kids from other schools, and other schools, like on the surface, don't seem to have those same problems.
Uh-huh.
You know, and so then you wonder, like the school that we coach at is a fairly affluent, you know, Milwaukee suburban school, and so it's kind of like, I think it's easy to hone in on, you know, is it just kids that have never really had to work that hard for anything, you know, and so is there some of that just kind of inherent laziness? But then everybody that we're running against would also be from fairly affluent suburban Milwaukee schools. You know, neither of us are the type of coach to, you know, be out there on the track, on the course, you know, screaming your head off, you know, come on, you got to dig, you know, you got to give it everything you have. Like, that's not who either one of us is.
Yep.
Like from a negative standpoint, I mean, you know, you see coaches that do that exact same thing, but it's a very uplifting thing versus being, you know, a negative kind of pushing type thing. So you start to wonder on some level, like, is it us? Is it, you know, like, are we taking it too soft on some of these kids? Or, you know, I'm sure, like everything, the truth probably lies somewhere in between. But I mean, that's kind of one of my things in general, is I think that just as a society, as a culture, I think by and large, we are all way too comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of us, and I put myself in this camp too a lot of times, have forgotten what it's like to really have to dig deeper than you think you do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can go to the well in a workout, you know, you can, you know, whatever, pull an all-nighter to study for an exam, but when things really get heavy, a lot of us start to break down. And again, like I said, I am probably more guilty of that than most because, in the big scheme of things, everything that I'm doing is largely self-motivated. I don't have to go out and try and win, a 50-mile race because, I need that $1,500 to pay rent for June.
Uh-huh.
Like I don't need to go out and, hustle and everything to buy groceries and that sort of thing. You enjoy, any level of success in life from a financial perspective. And I think it becomes very easy to start losing sight of what it takes to kind of be hungry and what it takes to really work hard. And not that you would expect that out of, high school and middle school kids, but I think it does set the stage for, later on in life. You tend to coast through school and then coast through college and then, get a corporate job and coast through that. And then all of a sudden you're 40 years old and 35 pounds overweight with high blood pressure and you don't know what the hell happened.
This you're touching on something I was there's a book book I'm like so close to finishing finally, but Boys in the Boat, I don't know if you've heard of it. I've talked about it on a few other podcasts, but World War II era row crew from Washington that they're undergrads, they're all farm boys, they have like these crazy backstories, and they go on to not only win the nationals but go on to the Olympics where they will play Nazi Germany or compete against Nazi Germany in rowing. And it's the same kind of principle in that story. It's like most of these guys are in college because of a scholarship for rowing, or they've been busting their ass working all summer, multiple jobs, sun up to sundown, to just skimp by and barely pay for school. And I've touched on this with other podcast guests as well, but you're absolutely right. This sense of ease we all have in getting our food. Most of us don't have to worry about being attacked or eaten throughout the day, or
right.
We don't. There's obviously a lot of things going on in our society when it comes to gender and race. But for the vast majority of us, this is the safest period in history. So, yeah, there's definitely a lack, or like we've just kind of like dulled our senses, and so many of us are like, well, breakfast will be there in the morning. Parents are gonna pay for this and tomorrow. So what's your, I see it in myself too. There's definitely days where I'm like, man, you're getting soft. Like, we gotta go do some things to kind of sharpen that axe point. And man, what everything you're saying kind of rings true. So what do you, and we can talk about, you have a daughter, so you definitely have more skin in the game than myself. I can talk until I'm blue in the face, but at the end of the day, I go home to a dog. So
that's probably more work than my daughter.
Little easier.
She's pretty low maintenance.
Yeah, but so for yourself, like what are some kind of, and you as someone who notices this, what are some kind of ways you set challenges for, your daughter, maybe your athletes? Obviously, you can lead them to water, you can't make them drink. But what are some ways you kind of put challenges in front of them as well as yourself? So I don't know who you want to start with first. You, your daughter, your athletes. I'm throwing a lot at you. My thoughts are everywhere right now with what you're talking about.
Well, I understand. With the athletes, I'll be the first person to admit that the middle school coaching piece, I have very, I guess, minimal expectations out of all of the kids. Even the ones that work hard, there's such a culture in our school especially, but I see it in the other schools as well. At this age, it's really focused on inclusion. And like I'm the coach of the 7th and 8th grade girls. There's a guy who is he's like the coordinator of the entire track program, 5th through 8th grade. And he said hundreds of times, if a kid wants to run the 800, put him in the 800. If a kid wants to run the 800 and the 100, put him in both. It doesn't matter. We just basically want kids participating. And the hope is, out of the 100 kids that we have between boys and girls across 4 grade levels, that 4 or 5 of them end up developing a love for whether it's running or field events or whatever, and then use that when they get to high school to continue on. I will be totally honest, it's been an extremely hard mindset for me to adopt. Because that line of thinking doesn't make any sense to me, and not necessarily from a coaching standpoint, but from an athlete standpoint.
Yeah.
I don't understand why you would not want to improve. I don't understand why, you can look at a kid who, runs a 14-second 100-meter dash at the first track meet and runs a 15-second 100-meter dash at the last track meet. And like, if I'm that kid, I'm devastated at the fact that not only did I not get better, I actually got worse.
Yep.
But there are so many kids, it seems like it doesn't bother them at all. You mentioned my own daughter. I dance a fine line with her. I always want her to push herself, but she has expressed on multiple occasions in multiple different arenas that she is very afraid of like disappointing us, or if she doesn't perform at a specific level in a game or get a specific grade or whatever, like that we're going to be disappointed. And a lot of that comes from the fact that, like, okay, your first quarter report card, you got 5 A's and a B, so let's work on getting that last B to an A, and making sure that I'm acknowledging the fact that, hey, 5 A's is awesome, and I'm extremely happy that you got 5 A's, and I'm not disappointed that you got a B, but let's continue to just push, and let's, work ourselves up to where we're performing at a maximum level. And it's a really slippery slope, because you turn into, the dad who, 15, 20 years from now, my daughter's sitting on a therapist's couch and saying, well, my dad was never happy with anything that I did, even though I was happy with everything that she did. If she's getting the message, hearing it the wrong way, that's a really dangerous game to play with kids, especially kids, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. So I try and do my best to make sure that I do, set goals for her. She got, like I said, 5 A's and a B, and so then let's work on getting all A's. And then she got all A's, and so then it becomes, okay, can you get all A's plus not have any, like behavior noted, like where they put little notes on the report card.
Uh-huh.
Can you get all A's and not have any, like notes on your report card about, oh, she acted out on such and such day or whatever. It's because I want her to learn to not ever get comfortable and to always be striving to be better. But again, it's walking that line of making sure she understands that, like, hey, I never got straight A's in school. So for me to, like, expect her to get straight A's, no fucking way.
Yeah. That was my next question.
Student.
I was going to say, like, what kind of, because I know, for most of school, I was an AAB student, and then there would be the classes and the top subjects that I just couldn't fake, or that's basically how I got through most of school. When I think back about it, is faking it because it was typically boring, and just kind of like knowing how to answer multiple choice questions. Like I can remember there being one of my psychology classes, the teacher gave us a multiple choice test where literally it was all gibberish and none of it was on actual content, but it was it was part of a research project to see how well children could answer this test, but it was just based off of like the I think it was like the average of how teachers make multiple choice tests, because they took like a bunch of tests and they were able to like break down how teachers typically make their multiple choice tests. So it was built off of that average, but not using
Okay.
it was basically like a Dr. Seuss rhyme in a multiple choice test. And
Sure.
I was the only kid in all of this teacher's classes to get 100% on this thing. And it was literally just like, well, here's the average of how teachers word their multiple choice tests. And I'm that like doing that, and then being able to, from a young age, just write out like shit that kind of sort of made sense, even though I maybe never read anything in class. I would just like use buzzwords that I remember the teacher kind of coming up with, and then create a narrative off that. And very rarely was there a teacher that would question or challenge it, because they're like, well, shit, he wrote, a page or two, so giving me points for that. So I struggle. I think if I ever have a child, I'm going to struggle hard with grades, because I'm going to be like, hey, I get it. School's boring. Like I wasn't interested, or like I was never motivated by grades for whatever reason. Never motivate like it never motivated me. Teachers could talk to me in their office, have to come in and explain my grade, or why I acted up, or why I didn't turn in an assignment. I was more interested. Like, I've always loved reading, I've always loved learning, but the classical school setting was never the best environment for me to learn. So I don't know if you, and I've had professors and teachers who, they hate the grades, like, because so many people are just, that's what they're worried about. I've had countless professors who are, well, I've had X student come in and he brought their parent with, because I gave them a B or an A minus.
Right.
And the student's like, well, I've always had A's. I'm an A student. You need to give me an A. Like, I can't have an A minus. Well, you didn't fulfill the requirements, or you didn't actually, learn anything. You just kind of like checked the boxes and expected an A. So I'm always, for me, I play mind games with this conversation in my head all the time about, like, are we actually teaching children how to learn, or are we just teaching them how to take these tests that we've arbitrarily decided make for good workers, or test these dates, whereas we're not actually teaching them how to learn. So that's always it's always something I circle around with and have questions on. And there's go on.
So I was just going to say, I 100% agree with, legitimately everything that you just said. You described me as a student to a T. Being able to take multiple choice tests, regardless of subject matter, and then being able to string together a cogent, 3-paragraph on an essay, like, that's how you get through school.
Yep.
I'll give you a fine piece of advice. When my daughter was younger, and we would talk about grades and school and stuff like that, and I would talk about the fact that, like, I never studied, I never did homework, whether you're talking high school, college, whatever. I would show up, I would take the tests, I would usually get, an A or like a decently high B on the tests. And then I would miss a bunch of assignments, skip class a bunch of times, and end up every semester with a C. You know what I mean? Like, they couldn't dispute the fact that I did well on the tests, but they could mark me down on all the other stuff that goes into being a student. Well, so then at one point, like, I was talking with my daughter about grades, and she was like, well, you always said that you got bad grades, and you didn't care about school, and look at where you are, and it's trying to deliver the message of, yeah, everything worked out in the end for the best, but I'm trying to make it so that you don't have all of the stupid bullshit between ages 17 and 30, where you learn the downside of skipping class twice a week,
Yep.
like that kind of stuff. Like, so maybe don't share that stuff about your learning style with your own
Right.
children until they get old enough to have their own study habits ingrained. But I mean, I agree so much with what you said as far as I don't think by and large we're teaching kids how to learn. We're teaching them how to memorize stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you okay, I have 3 weeks to cram this region of the world or this period of history into my head, and then I've got a test on Friday, and by noon on Saturday I will have forgotten all of it.
Yep. And
and that's terrible.
Yeah, and I don't want to. I don't want people to think we're bad mouthing teachers, because I respect the hell out of them and appreciate them. I'm just, as someone who's gone through the system, and I kind of look back at it now on most of the skills I use and the things I've learned and how I learn. It's like, And I've got teachers lined up to come on the podcast. So just in case there's teachers listening who are like, Bill, when I see you in person, I'm gonna punch you in the throat. I want them to realize I've got some pretty cool guest teachers coming on the podcast who are doing some awesome things in the world of education. So, yeah, don't completely hate on us. We're not shitting on teachers. As youth coaches, we are making observations. And you're a parent.
7th and 8th grade kids for 90 minutes a day, 2 days a week.
Yep.
The people who do this shit 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 9 months a year should be sainted in my world.
Sainted, make $1 million a year, and just get an all expense paid trip in the summer.
Yeah, if we wanted to delve into politics and government and that sort of thing, the treatment of our teachers in the way our system is set up is one of the few things that pisses me off more than kids at track practice who don't listen. So, yeah, definitely no disrespect to teachers at all.
Agreed. So, with what was I going to go with this? Oh, okay, so we're talking about, and I always come back to with what we're talking about, my own kind of habits with school and how I am now, and I would definitely say there was a lack of personal discipline on myself back then. But in the same token, like a lot of the things I did enjoy doing, I obviously did like very passionately with a ton of reps, ton of practice. It just wasn't that same discipline and passion wasn't directed towards things that the system kind of puts emphasis and importance on. So, and then, later in life, the fuck ups that you and I are talking about between 17 and 30, you kind of like learn that, hey, there's all these other cool fucking things in the world that we can pursue, that we can make money off of, that we can make a living off of, that we can dive into. So then, I think we both have done it where we've taken that passion and that discipline for fucking off on things that obviously were not deemed important by the system, and then you kind of learn to apply that to these other things. Like it's my love of video games and all that shit that has like that kind of pushed me towards this podcast platform and the media platform that I do through Team Early as Fuck with marketing and the video and the audio content. Like it's that same, that's kind of what I think about all this stuff is like, it's a write your own story version of a real life video game. So, it's all of those things that would have been, and then you look at people who actually get paid to play video games now, like people watch people play video games or pay to watch people play video games. They're like, what? That's a thing? Where the hell was that when I was a kid?
No kidding. How do I sign up for that class?
Oh, yeah. So, and there's actually a school here. There's a couple schools here, charter schools here in Point, that are doing a lot of awesome things when it comes to education. And I get these students that come work out at the facility in the evenings, and they're just like aglow, and they've got all these crazy stories about cool stuff they're doing in school. And yeah, maybe the STEM programs aren't perfect at these charter schools, but I just can't help but think, like, if all kids were this excited, or even a majority of kids were this excited about school, these kind of programs, like, where would we be at as a society
Yeah.
and a culture? Because they're fired up, like all of those kids. And then if I get an answer of other than I don't know, or I don't remember, or I was bored, or like there's like five cookie cutter answers I get from kids that are in like a traditional school, and then these kids from the charter school, they're like, "Oh, I learned all this," or "We were outside," or we like, it's just like, "Oh, crap, how do I sign up to go to your school?" And then I always get the answer of, you're too old, Coach Bill." And then
Yeah, you're too old.
they just shoot me down hard. I'm like, "Oh, crap." But
I was actually I've been reading this book. I heard this lady, her name escapes me. She was on a recent episode of the Rich Roll podcast,
nice.
and she is like kind of the preeminent expert of parenting seventh and eighth grade girls. So obviously that topic speaks to me with a seventh grade daughter. And they talked for 2 hours about kind of the various things that you will experience as a parent of a child that age, and kind of what's normal and what's less normal, and what's worrisome behavior and that sort of thing. But one of the things they talked about was the traditional school environment. And the guest said, she phrased it, she's like, well, think about it like this. Think about it in your work day. If your work day was to arrive at 8 a.m., and between 8 a.m. and 3:30 p.m., you attend 8 45-minute meetings where it's basically, you're not expected to participate in the meeting at all. Just maybe take a few notes, raise your hand with a question every once in a while. In between meetings, you have 4 minutes to shuffle from one conference room to another conference room. And then you get, 30 minutes to eat lunch really fast, and, spend 8 minutes outside before you have to get back into your next meeting. She's kind of quiet for a second, and she's like, how would you feel at the end of your day, when you get home and your spouse says, well, what happened at work today? And it was one of those things where it was like, and I think about all the times where, I pick my daughter up from school. What'd you do at school today? Nothing.
Yeah.
Did you learn anything? I don't know. It was pretty boring. And and what she was talking about basically was the fact that those aren't the questions to ask on the way home from school. Those are the questions to ask 7 o'clock that night, after dinner, after the kid has had some time to decompress and unwind and process everything. And as she was talking about it, I was, again, kind of thinking about this in my own life. And it was 100% true. I could not get a thing out of my daughter, within the first half hour, 45 minutes after school.
Yeah.
But then by the time dinner rolled around, or after dinner, most of the time I never even had to ask. It would be, like just sitting on the couch and, oh yeah, this happened today, and then this person did this, and then this person got yelled at by the teacher. And it's like she had that time to just let her brain recover from the monotony of, the classes and the routine. And now all of a sudden she's back to being engaged. So I thought that was a really interesting
Yeah, I like that a lot.
again, for people who have kids. And I mean, I try and apply it to coaching as well. We're lucky with the middle school kids. The practices are like in the evenings, so they don't start until 6 o'clock. So the kids leave school and then, eat dinner and all that kind of junk, and then come back to practice. But in a high school environment, the kids are going from school straight into practice, and you see those things, and it's like, or you hear things like that, and you think about, again, the kids that are running a half mile from the school and then kind of screwing off in the woods. Maybe there's a little bit of a reason for that. I mean, we had a kid on the cross country team, and I couldn't believe it. She comes walking out of school. She's got a backpack with all of her books. She's got another gym bag with her, running gear. and she's carrying a musical instrument as well. It's like, it's a 15-year-old kid, doesn't even have a driver's license yet, and she's like a goddamn pack mule. And that's what she needed for a Tuesday in September.
Yeah.
It's like maybe on some level, some of these kids have a little too much going on and just need a fucking break.
Yeah.
And so again, it all goes back to like finding that line of, I think to work with kids, whether at high school or middle school or whatever, you have to really become in tune with the responses that you're getting and the attitude that you're getting. There's a big difference between a kid who is just kind of an insubordinate prick and a kid who's having a bad day,
Yeah. Did they?
And it's knowing like, okay, this is how I have to talk to Joe, but this is how I have to talk to Kurt,
Yeah, the verbiage is so important. Even with kids and developing, and their more and more research is showing like, hey, your brain's not. You're still like late teens, early 20s. Your brain is still like adolescent phase. So verbiage is so important.
Mm-hmm.
Did that podcast mention like what questions you should be asking? Like,
they did. This was maybe a month ago, so I couldn't tell you any of what those questions
what was
were.
You said the Rich Roll podcast though?
It was Rich Roll, and actually I grabbed the book from the library. So let me look here real quick.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that in the show notes.
So the name of the book is called Untangled.
Why does that sound
And then
familiar?
the author is Lisa Damour, Damour.
Oh yeah, right here.
And so she's got this. This was, I guess, her first book, and then she was on Rich Roll because she wrote a second book more recently. But I have to finish the first one before I go to the second one because I don't have OCD about much, but I do have things like that. You can't go out of order.
So true. Cool. All right, so
it's fascinating to me when you're on the topic of verbiage. Another thing that I hear a lot of. And again, whether we're talking 7th and 8th graders, high schoolers, myself, a lot of times, but the prevalence of the words "I can't."
Oh,
I don't know if you deal with that.
I don't get driven. Well, okay, I take that back. I've got people know my triggers well in the gym as a coach, but I've had so many messages from people over the years who are just like thanking me because we're so used to saying it all the time.
Yeah.
I can't.
It's instinct.
And I shut it down hard in the gym. Like I'll get in their face. I'm not rude about it. I just confront them on it. Like, why do you think that? Why do you keep telling yourself that story, that narrative? What I'm asking you to do or what we're talking about is not out of the realm of possibility, or I wouldn't. Like, I'm so big on giving people a challenging environment, but I know that they can accomplish it. Or maybe the final result, that goal is out of their reach right now, but when it comes to movement, like I know how to get you there. The big one for me was just getting more, and it's really been females over the last 6 months to a year, is like getting them to realize, like moms especially, like, no, you're an athlete. You're training like an athlete. I'm not asking you to like do anything that makes you feel uncomfortable when it comes to training, but I want you to think about what you're doing in the gym as improving your performance as a mom, a wife. You've got kids and they're going to see you now stronger, more confident. Like to me, that's what being athletic is about in like the stoic sense of the word. So getting them to realize that, and then them messaging me, be like, holy shit, like this happened, or my kid was like, Mom, holy cow, like you're so strong, you have muscles, blah, blah, and then they go on to brag to their friends, brag to the people at school. Or the big one in the, like, I'm hopefully this summer will be slacklining, but last summer we did like so the normal programming, but I implemented juggling, and you would not believe the amount of just like stink eyes, rolling of the eyes, people telling me, oh, I can't juggle. I can't juggle. I'm like, how often have you tried? How many reps have you put in? Have you had someone who is obsessed with movement try to coach you? Like for me, I don't give a shit how good of an athlete you are or how good of a coach you are. Like, you have to be able to explain it to somebody with a PhD, and then you also need to be able to explain it to like a 7-year-old. Like, that's, to me, that tells me, and that's how I am just about everything. So I didn't know how to juggle going into this program either, and I went and found a juggling coach, and then I learned how to juggle, and then just from being someone who couldn't juggle going in, I was able to transfer cues and things to work on, and both intrinsic and extrinsic focus points, just based on like watching the person try to juggle and struggle, so that's, and then I would get messages from people all summer, Bill, holy hell, I can juggle. And then they would send me videos, or they'd be like blowing their kids' minds, because here they are in the kitchen juggling random ass household implements, and their kids are like, holy shit, my mom can juggle. like it's something as simple as that. And then you realize, like, what the hell else can I do that I've been telling myself I can't? And it's just something as simple as, hey, we're going to work on juggling for 15 minutes a week. Like, that was it. I was like, you're going to commit to this for 15 minutes a week. And at the end of it, if you're like, I still can't juggle, or Bill, this was dumb, this is a waste of time, I'm like, fine, I can live with that. You can talk shit about me and how dumb juggling is for the rest of your life. But if you commit to it for the summer, 15 minutes. And it was cool. I just, like, this winter, I got a video from someone saying, holy shit, I can juggle. Someone in their 30s who has just been telling themselves this narrative, like, I can't. And now they're, holy shit, I can. And it bleeds into everything else. So yeah, I'm a big fan of blowing apart the I can't and getting people to kind of realize this wave of momentum that they can build. Yeah. I'm sorry, you got me on my soapbox. You triggered me.
No, that's quite all right. I love that. Because second semester of my freshman year of college, I was close with a close friend rather, and he came into our house one day and said, I want to learn how to juggle. And he looked at me, he's like, you want to learn how to juggle? And I said, yeah, sure, why not? And that's what I learned that semester of college.
Yes.
Was I learned how to juggle. And to this day, like, just actually tonight, my daughter had a couple of softball games, and there was kind of a break in between innings, and I picked up 3 softballs and started juggling them, and all of the kids on both teams were like, whoa, that guy can juggle.
Right.
And of course, here's my daughter, like, sitting on the bench with
Dad,
her head down, like,
I hate
God,
you.
what is he doing?
But really, she was like, I wish I could juggle.
Right, exactly. And what I always tell her is, like, would you rather that I be like one of the nerdy, like, out of shape, awkward dads? Like, no, you don't want that. Like,
right.
You got to be full tilt all the time.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I would be curious. Maybe I need to come up to point, and you can teach me how to blow apart the I can't in my own mind, because I'm pretty good at getting other people to do it.
Right.
Not so good at doing it myself.
It's so true, man. Like, as coaches, I find this more and more, and it's one of the big reasons I have the podcast and talking to people, coaches like yourself, people like yourself, is I need those people. Like, I need to be surrounded by other coaches who are damn good at what they do and better than me at things that I find value in, and surround myself with those people, because that's exactly right. Like, there's all these little neurotic tendencies I have, or these limiting narratives I've been telling myself, and until I have a conversation with someone like yourself, I don't realize it, and then it's just like comes full in my face, and I'm confronted by it. So, no, man, coaches need coaches. I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah, I mean, you are one of the main reasons why I continue pushing forward with the book that I was writing, because you, probably more than anybody other than my wife, were so and continue to be so complimentary of the things that I do write. It was one of those things where it's like I can sit and I can read the things that I write and I can say, well, this sucks. Like this is not something that anybody is actually going to want to read. And I can convince myself of that really, really quickly.
Oh yeah, super
But when
fast.
you get people, when you get people like yourself who are continually saying, dude, this is awesome. I love reading this, and that sort of thing. It becomes very difficult to continue to tell yourself that story. And Annie is very good. She's really good at administering tough love, which I'll be the first person to admit I really am not good at receiving. But like, could say something like, I really don't think anybody's going to be interested in this book. And okay, well, give me 5 reasons why you think that. And if I can't come up with 5 reasons, then she just sits there, with kind of that one eyebrow raised, like, well, what else you got? No other excuses? Well, then get back to writing.
You should probably get back to writing.
Yep. So thanks for all of the kind words that you're always throwing my way when I put up an Instagram post.
Oh hell yeah, man!
It's much appreciated. And again, I posted. I don't know if it was this morning. I think it was this morning that I actually officially finished my first draft of the book last night.
Oh really?
And that 100%, that 100% would not have happened if it weren't for all of the compliments that you threw my way over the last 3 months. So much appreciated.
Oh hell yeah, dude! My pleasure. You're welcome. I'm excited to read it.
Yeah, there's a long ways to go. Of course, I still have to, I got to go back and edit it and all that sort of stuff. But
Yeah.
it tipped the scales at nearly 110,000 words.
Oh.
Which is maybe a little aggressive for a 3-week a book about a 3-week trail run.
I don't think so.
I think I probably have some trimming to do, but we'll see.
Have you read Born to Run, or I just blanked on the other one?
Yeah.
Well,
I've read Born to Run. So in the ultra running world, there's usually one of 2 books that got people hooked, and it's either Born to Run or 50-50-50, which was the story of Dean Karnassus and his 50 marathons in 50 states in 50 days.
Yep.
Which I read that book just completely stumbled across it on accident in the library one day. I think maybe I'd run a 5K or maybe 2 5Ks and a half marathon. It was very early on in my running career, and I found this book and I remember reading it, and my mind was just blown at what this guy was able to accomplish. And it's interesting now to look back 5 years later, and you see that in the running world, 50 marathons in 50 states in 50 days, the most impressive thing about that is the 50 states in 50 days. It's not the 50 marathons.
Yep.
People do shit like that all the time.
Uh-huh.
But as your initial exposure to it, and Dean Karnassus, the guy who wrote that book and has achieved a lot of these things, for all of his I don't know, people who have met him, and I count myself in that camp. He can be extremely nice, and he can also be extremely standoffish. I think just kind of depending on how the mood hits him.
How many miles he's ran that day?
Right, exactly. For better or worse, he is a very good at making hard things seem even more impossible, if that makes sense. You read, and he's talking about, I did this race and I thought my face was going to fall off, and just all sorts of crap. And it's and then you actually meet other people who have done the race, and it's oh, this guy who's 48 years old and 20 pounds overweight and lives in Delafield, Wisconsin, has also done that same race and survived. So maybe Dean was using a little creative license with just how difficult this race actually was.
There's a meme floating around. It's hey, guy with the $2,000 hiking clothes, the climbing sticks, and the $300 boots. Take it easy. My 7-year-old daughter in Crocs and a Barbie just hiked the same trail as you.
Yes, I have seen that. My
Just
daughter hikes the trail in Crocs and carrying a Barbie. Yes, I've seen that. That's a good one.
it's that's so true, dude. So let's. I definitely want to touch on your. So obviously the the Ice Age Trail through hike, right? That's what you
Yeah.
would call it. I just want to make sure I got that right. I always just call it the crazy Ice Age trek that the two of you went on. But yeah, the through. So I hope in the book it includes the first year of you both being like, we're just gonna show up in the spring and figure it out. I hope that's included.
Oh yes, yeah.
Perfect.
That's one of the things that I struggled with was how much to make it about 2017 and the failure, and how much to make it about 2018 and the success.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure to deliver that message that this success did not happen on accident.
Uh-huh.
And there was a vast number of failures that went into it that we learned from. And I wanted to make sure to deliver that, because I mean, that's the exact mentality that we have. And I know you know that from, our first visit with you. We can figure this out. I mean, that's been my motto for basically everything my entire life. Like,
yeah,
I'll
and
figure out how to do this somehow or another.
It's a great motto, and I love it because that's the same way. That's the same way I roll. And there's obviously a place where you got to buckle down, show the discipline, and start to prepare. Especially when you do hit that first stumble, that first barrier, and it's a roadblock. But it could have been so easy for the two of you to say, "Well, fuck it, we're not going to do that. We failed." Because that's what a lot of people do, thinking about nutrition habits, changing lifestyle habits. Well, my buddy Derek and I, we talk about this in the Highway to Well, is where some people see failure as in, boom, I quit, never attempting it again. People like yourself, like, this is how I see obstacles like this. It's like, oh, all right, that's it. Workout as planned. Did I fuck up? Where did I fuck up? How can I improve upon it? And let's get back on the saddle. So, it's just like, for us, it's part of the journey where we're like, oh yeah, haha, laugh that off. Okay, we could have done that better. Now this time we are going to do it better. So I'm glad that's in the book, because I think that's going to be a huge part of it.
Well, and it's interesting too, because again, like I can identify in myself a lot of that characteristic that you just described of, like, and I'll be the first person to admit, I DNF'd that 50-mile race last weekend, a week and a half ago, and I wrote 2 Instagram posts within probably 3 or 4 days of not finishing that race, both of which I was basically contemplating, like, I don't think I'm ever going to do a 50-miler ever again, because I've attempted 2 of them now, and neither one of them has gone well at all. And maybe this just isn't for me. And I am extremely lucky to have Annie in my life, because she has the mindset that you're describing, and I am working really hard to develop that mindset of, this is a mistake. The Ice Age thing, though, was totally different, because that wasn't my goal. That was me helping her get to her goal.
Yeah.
And so when it didn't work the first time, then it was like, all right, we're full speed ahead. We're going to figure out how to make this happen, because her, getting that goal was extremely important to me. I have not been able to figure out how to make that same mindset for my own goals. And it's fucking stupid. Like, I ran the Ice Age 50-mile last year and completed it just fine. I did a 50-mile previous to that one, so, like, I have proven to myself twice already that I can do a 50-mile run.
Yep.
But you have 2 bad ones in a row, and never mind the fact that the one in Chattanooga in the fall, I was undertrained for, like 100% undertrained. B, like there was fucking 3 inches of rain that fell during the course of that run. Like you legitimately, the first probably 10 miles of the course it was like running through a stream, and it's just like, that's just hard. And yeah, there were a lot of people that finished it that day in the exact same conditions that I did. There were a lot of people that didn't finish it either. And this race, the Ice Age of this past year, or this past week rather, I had kind of a fluke accident, and I was really convinced that I had actually injured myself, and I tried to push through it, tried to like kind of squash those demons that I've wrestled with in the past as far as like giving up when things get hard. But like I put it all out there in that race to like run as hard as I could and like not hold anything back and all that kind of stuff, and shit just didn't break my way. And that has nothing to do with the fact that like I can't complete that run, or complete that run. But failure sucks. And in that time immediately after a failure, it's very hard to jump back on. And I think that's part of the reason why you look at the first attempt for Annie to complete the Ice Age Trail in May of 2017, and then the second attempt in September of 2018. Some of that, there was kind of a grieving process where it was like, okay, we have to step away from the things that happened, as far as, like, well, okay, I guess we're never going to be able to complete this. We have to start sorting through all of this and figure out, like you said, where did we go wrong, and what did happen and what can be fixed. And I was full speed ahead on that, like I said, because I was about helping her. And so it was very easy for me to just be like, all right, we can just put all this other bullshit aside and let's figure out how to make this happen. Can't do it for myself though.
Hey man, you're like I was saying, coaches need coaches, and you're working on that next kind of that piece for you to. You're already a great coach, so it's you working on this for yourself, I think, is going to help give you both mental and physical tools to kind of continue to help others and inspire others and be a great coach and a great writer. So that's...
one of the kids that I coached in cross country, now it's track season for high school as well, and she was running the mile. I don't know if this was last week or 2 weeks ago, and she sent me a text like the day before the meet. She was like, oh, kind of nervous about the mile and all that. And I said, well, what's your goal? And she's like, well, I think in order to place, I'm going to have to run faster than a 5:45. And I'm like, dude, I've seen you run 5:45s in workouts during cross-country practice. Like, don't tell me you can't that you can't do better than that on a track, like for 1 mile. I know you can do better than that. Oh, no. And I said, I think you can probably break 5:30. And, she's, text back right away, oh God, I've never ran a 5:30. I could never do that. I'm like, just stop. I think you can run a 5:30. 2 hours later, I get a text message of, a picture of the results, and she ran a 5:27.
Nice.
Like a 20-second PR in the mile. Like, and she, along with it, she said, I think the fact that you told me that I can do it was all I needed to hear. And I stopped telling myself I can't do it. And it's like, yes, exactly. Stop telling yourself you can't do it. But then in the same breath, I'm like, well, I can't write, and I can't do this, and I can't do that.
You're just like, damn it.
I'm fine. I'm just full of hypocrisy.
Oh, we all are. It's the beauty of being human. So going back to your writing, let's dive into that now. So can you, I don't know, guide us through maybe a overview of the book, or just your process? I'm motivated by your blog posts, and I wrote a blog for a number of years through the gyms I owned and coached at, and now I want to do a kind of just like a more personal one, nothing where I'm setting deadlines like I am with the podcast, because the podcast is really like my weekly kind of me giving myself deadlines for creative work. So that's the podcast. But I just like my love of coaching, my love of words, the language we use, both verbal and written. I really enjoy the way you write, and it's motivates me to keep honing my own craft. So I'm just curious how your how your creative process works, what kind of motivates you, inspires you, and yeah.
Well, first of all, I appreciate the kind words there again. Much appreciated. My creative process, I think, is again, I don't want to come back to it being half-assed, but on some level, it kind of is. Like I can sit down and just do a complete like mental dump onto onto a Microsoft Word document.
Yep.
And run it through the spell check and hit publish. I like when I was researching kind of like, am I actually going to write this book? How is this going to work? And I'm reading all this stuff about, you've got to do chapter outlines, and you've got to do this, and you've got to talk to a literary agent, and you've got to, all this bullshit. And it's like, I have no desire to do any of that, because what I need to do is sit down in front of a screen and just start typing and just let it flow. And I have discovered now through like the blog posts that I wrote every day about Annie's run, as I've gone back, because I ended up actually using those as kind of an outline just to jog my memory.
Yep.
Of like, okay, that's right, day 15 we were here and blah blah blah. When I do that, when I write like that, I think the message is there, but the quality, by and large, is pretty shit. To the point where, like, as I'm reading it, I'm like, God, I'm missing words, and like, just it's not very good.
Yep.
So I have learned with my blogs, which I haven't written a blog in probably 6 or 8 months, if not more than that.
Yeah, since
Probably,
December.
I think the last one I wrote was after
Sure.
that Chattanooga one.
Yep.
But I've tried to get more careful with that, and now, like with the book, I am going to, I hate to admit it out loud, but at one point I honestly thought about, like, I'm just going to type it, make sure that there's no big spelling errors, and then kind of go from there. But I am going to, like, go back and make sure that, like, everything makes sense and not rush it.
Yeah.
If that makes
for sure.
if that makes sense. But yeah, dude, I'm not like a big, I've got to do this in such and such order and all that kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
Not nearly as organized or, I guess, professional as I probably should be.
Oh no, nonsense.
That's what works for me.
That's part of the process. Yeah. It's the creative process.
Yeah.
So with go on.
No, I was just going to say, so the book itself is basically there's a kind of a chapter on the conception of the idea, and then a couple of chapters of like what went wrong in 2017, and then basically the rest of the book, each chapter is a day of the run. As far as like, this is kind of what happened, and this is where we ran, and these were the funny things that happened, and this is kind of a description of where we were at. I got through, so the whole thing was like I guess we would have ended on day 22, right? So I got up to about day 15 or so, and I just completely set it aside, and I didn't look at it for probably close to a month. And it was in that moment, or in that time frame rather, that I really began to like question, as I'd written, probably 40 or 50,000 words at that point. And you sit and think, like, who the fuck is going to care about this level of detail about this run? Like, the blog posts, were all anywhere from like 1,200 to 1,500 words, and it was like kind of a brief snapshot of like, oh yeah, and then our friends Keith and Steve came out and ran for a couple of hours, and then Annie stepped in a hole, and then, like,
yep.
but now you're talking like full paragraphs about this kind of stuff. And I just, it just became really easy to kind of sit and think like, I don't really think anybody is going to want to read this. And again, Annie to the rescue. I was kind of struggling, with like, because she's pushing really hard, and she's like doing these talks for the Ice Age local chapters and stuff like that. And like every time we're going to one of these, she's like, "Boy, it sure would be nice if we had 4 or 5 copies of your book to take with us that we could, maybe sell."
She just stares at you.
Again, tough love and subtlety, are big things. But so I was really kind of struggling at one point with it, and she reminded me. She's like, you told me the reason you wanted to write this book is to tell the story of what happened, and you always said, you didn't care if you sold 8 copies of the book. That's fine. You're not setting out to, make $1 million. You're not setting out to, be a New York Times published, New York Times bestseller or whatever. You told me that you wanted to write this book to tell the story of what happened out there. So quit worrying about whether or not anybody wants to read it and tell the fucking story. And that was a good message. And then I took 2 chapters of the book and I sent it to a friend of ours who is a pretty voracious reader. She is also a runner, so like she would have some interest in it. You know what I mean? Like I understand, a 48-year-old housewife who has never ran a day in her life and lives in Nebraska is never going to pick up this book, and that's fine.
You don't know that. She could find it, stumble upon it, read it, and be motivated as fuck to like change her life, create some healthy habits.
True.
Hey, I read Born to Run, and at the time I was maybe getting 5 miles a week in running, maybe, and that would be like sprint workouts, running after my dog. Like I'm not like no structured running. So, and I read that book and I was like, holy shit, I'm not motivated to run at all, because they definitely romanticized the runner's high. Like I'm like, they're just tricking you in this book. But I just appreciate the fuck out of the stories, and the same goes for I'm super pumped for your book, man. I'm definitely running more now, but that's just because I have a dog who's psychotic and needs exercise. So there's that part of it.
So I asked this friend of ours, and it's a good friend of ours, and I told her, I said, I want to send you like 2 chapters of the book, and I want you to be like brutally honest, and I 100% like don't care if you come back and say this is really dry, it's overly detailed. I have a tendency when I start writing, I think I must have been like a reporter or something in a previous life, because I have a tendency to write very like chronologically, like this happened and then this happened and then this happened, and I get bogged down in like, oh geez, I don't want to leave out this part, and I want to make sure I mention the name of the road that we're on and all that sort of thing.
Uh-huh.
And somebody else can look at it and say, dude, we don't need any of that detail. Nobody gives a fuck about any of that stuff. Just tell the fucking story, you know? And so, and I told her, I was like, I really want like honest, open feedback. Like, I'm not going to be offended if you tell me it sucks. And truth be told, I was kind of hoping she would tell me that it sucks, because then that would have been a very easy way for me to be like, all right, let's just shelve this for a while and we'll come back and visit it another day, you know? And so I sent her 2 chapters, and she came back maybe a day or 2 later and was like, yeah, this is great. Like, it's detailed, but you're, giving a lot of detail about the trail itself and how you were feeling and how Annie was feeling, and it's good. Keep going. And so I don't know if Annie like bribed her.
Right. Here's $10.
And told her like, even if you don't like it, like make sure you tell him that he does like it, because if you tell him he doesn't like it, he won't finish it. But yeah, so that was a very long-winded answer to the structure of the book, but it's a little bit of backstory about how we got there, a little bit of 2017, and then just a day-to-day kind of retelling. One of the reasons why I wanted to put everything on paper is that throughout all of it, I was not blogging from a totally honest perspective on the day-to-day reports, because Annie was reading the blogs every night, and so
I remember you
I was
commenting
very
on
careful.
that.
Yeah, yeah, I was really careful to, like, I'm not going to put anything in there about, it's day 19. She's got 48 hours to break the record and 150 miles to go, and I'm not sure she's going to be able to do it. Those are thoughts that I had over and over and
I'm
over,
gonna
but I
stuff
could
those
never
deep
say out
down.
loud,
Yep.
you know? And,
Well, A, she would
days
punch you,
where, like,
and B,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, days where I would be sitting there and thinking, like, you know, fuck, I got 15 text messages from my daughter who wants us to come home. And right now, I want to fucking go home. Like, I don't want to be out here anymore either. Like,
yeah,
this sucks. I'm sitting in a fucking van 12 hours a day waiting for her to show up so I can see her for 90 seconds. And then, off she goes again. And I certainly didn't feel that way all the time, but there were moments where you do feel like that. And you can't say any of that. And my big thing, what motivates me, what drives me insane, other than people saying I can't, again, other than me, because I can say I can't all I want, but nobody else can say it, is people who are not authentic.
uh-huh.
And I think that's a real cliche, um, when especially kind of in the social media Instagram world. But, like, everybody has people that they follow who, you know, every picture is perfectly posed and every post is perfectly written, and, every day is the best day that they've ever had, and every run is perfect. And, well, today's run was a struggle, but, all I could do was think about how beautifully sunny it was and how lucky I am to be alive and all that. And, like, if that's your honest to God mentality, more power to you.
I'm gonna
But
bottle that.
I don't fucking believe it. I don't buy it. Nobody is this happy, this positive, this successful all the fucking time.
Yep.
And I think it's really important because Annie, she deals with this kind of a lot, maybe less now than she used to. But, she was a very successful, very prolific runner over the last 10 years. And, she would spend a lot of time talking about, I wish that I could have people to run with, but nobody wants to run with me because they think they're not going to be able to keep up with me. It's this, because that's, when you look at somebody who wins every fucking race they compete in, like, people sit and think, like, oh, well, yeah, of course I'm not going to be able to run with her. I mean, hell, when I met her, I was intimidated. We went on a run, the first run that we went on, I nearly had a panic attack.
I need to hear this story.
Because, yeah, like, we were doing like a 5-mile run, and I nearly had a panic attack because I'm like, I'm not going to be able to keep up, and she's going to, like, I want to really impress this girl, and not only is she not going to be impressed, like, I'm going to be, throwing up in the woods, and, like, and again, Annie, God bless her, completely called me out on it. She's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? She's like, why do you think that every run I do is going to be 20 miles long at a 6-minute mile? Like, that's not reality.
Because you're a badass. I would expect that.
Right, exactly. I have short runs. I have long runs. I do some runs fast. I do some runs slow. Like, I'm no different than anybody else, other than the fact that, I have a tendency to, perform at a higher level when the races come around.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing, with her is that she has conquered that mental demon that a lot of us, myself included, struggle with, where when it's race day, it's all about pressure and performance and everything else. I mean, I could go out tomorrow and run a 50-mile, like, just, you and I meet up and, hey, we'll run 50 miles, and I'm sure it would be fine. But you slap a bib on my leg and put a medal at the finish line, suddenly I turn into a quivering pile of shit.
You need to my Jenna Halverson, she was just on the podcast. She's got her company called the Mental Clutch, and you should reach out to her. She's a badass, and she's like this. She's sports psychology, just wizard or witch. Would you call it a witch? I think it would be a witch. But
yes, female wizard. Yeah.
Female wizard. She's just like found a way to systematize what you're talking about and help people through the mental training for kind of something what Annie does just instinctively, and what some people just have it, but she's created a system to kind of help people. It's like squats but for your clutch mindset. So I'll send you the link for her podcast and her website. It's some cool stuff, but she's out of Prairie du Sec, and she's killing it. But yeah, man, because everything you just talked about, like what you were talking about for your own struggles and barriers, I'm like, Jenna's got a way to beat that. I have to just once again, coaches need coaches.
The sound of that.
And
coaching needing coaching. But my whole rant there that I got started on, why I wrote the book was I wanted to deliver what the authentic experience was. I wanted to deliver not just the highlights of every day, and and like I would put in some struggles here and there in the blog, but it was all very closely curated, not to present a perfect picture to everybody else, but to make sure that I didn't do anything inadvertently to impact Annie's mindset throughout the run. If she had told me, hey, I don't have time to read your blog every night, I'm just going to, recover and sit in the hot tub or whatever, I would have let it rip 100%, because I hate that inauthentic life that a lot of people post.
Yeah. So touching on that, I've had a few people mention kind of similar things even about what I post. And so do you think a lot of that comes from what we were fucking talking about way beginning of the podcast? So many people have it so easy. They don't have, like, other than and this is its own subject, the stress we create in our own minds for like the easy shit we do every day, like work stress, emails, like, yeah, it all adds up, but obviously we all have these mental games we play. So shit that really isn't that hard or demanding, and like a fight or flight, physical or mental stress, like we create our own stressors. You've been talking about it, I talk about it on the podcast. So do you think this, and then where I'm bringing this back to my little rant here is, people see, like, I read your post and I understand what you were, I read the parts where you were saying, and I think you and I even messaged back and forth where you curated them and kind of made sure Annie wasn't going to read anything that could kind of bring her down. But as someone who has struggled and failed with a lot of shit, at no point did I read your post and think, oh yeah, fucking picking flowers on the Ice Age Trail today, boys. Like, this is frolicking and just skipping from stop to, like, at no point did I get that vibe. And I think the people that do get that are just people who haven't struggled, who haven't, they're like, oh, the grass is always greener. It's like, no, this is, sure, there's a lot of people out there who are putting, they want their best image because they're trying to sell you something, or they're trying to, get a huge amount of followers. So they need ass shots and six-pack shots because they got to sell you their 6-week cleanse and all this other bullshit. But like when I see like your pictures, or Annie posts a picture from a run and she's smiling, where some people are like, oh, fuck those people, like, oh, it's easy for them, oh, it'd be easy for me to run 50 miles if I had her. Like, what I see is, oh, that's a fucking shitty run, and she was able to pick something out that made her, made you happy, made her happy. Like, out of all of the pain from running or like challenging yourself, like we were able to find something, some part of us, some moment of inspiration, or obviously the dopamines are playing like weird tricks on our brains, but like when I see people that I respect and the people I follow, like at no point am I like, oh yeah, it's fucking easy for that person, because that's such a dangerous trap that we allow ourselves to fall into from the mental component, like always comparing, always thinking the grass is greener. It's like, no, this is someone else who is struggling just like we are. I always think like this person has their own struggles. You know how I'm going to find out? I'm going to get to know them. I'm going to reach out, talk to them. I'm not going to try to assume from some little picture or blurb. Like I love Instagram for the pictures, but at the same time, I guess I come at it always assuming like, yeah, this person fucking struggled. They're successful. You don't get good at something. Like actually, you don't get good at something. You don't master something from just being naturally gifted at it or it coming easy. Like, it takes struggle. It takes failure. So when I see your posts, it's like, no, this is a guy that keeps coming back, keeps writing, keeps crafting it. And he's struggled. He's had things where he's probably written it and be like, yeah, that's not going to get posted anytime soon. Or, Annie being on a run and being like, fuck this, I'm going home. Or actually, she's probably never had that.
She like literally never does.
Has never had that. So
that, yes.
Yeah, beyond that part of my rant, the rest is true. But, at the same time, it's just, I guess, so that's like my little like thought on that is like the people that think that, I think just don't, like they don't have any real struggle, or they've never they're maybe caught in the I can't, or maybe they just never had someone to tell them I can. Like they've never had a coach to confront them and be like, hey, the fuck are you doing? Let's go. Like, how bad do you want it? Here are some steps.
Right.
So no, man, like at no point was I like, oh, these are inauthentic. Like, Brian, you fucking liar. Like, I just, I read your, I'm reading your post and I'm like, no, this is like for your own sanity and her sanity. You can't be making these daily blog posts and being like, fuck, more water, more, just, oh man, yeah. I loved it. Like, and now I love the book because now you can get into those details. Hindsight's 2020. You're having, this is the type 2 fun as I've come to call it, where you're having all these memories and you're like, oh yeah, that part really fucking sucked. And now you can elaborate on it. You can share the story of what the Ice Age Trail is really like. Because, some parts of Wisconsin, the Ice Age Trail, you're like, huh, Annie, it's not that fucking bad. Like, it's well-maintained trail. And then you're going to be like, all right, here's some truth, motherfuckers. Like, we got to all get together and, start volunteering more and putting in some work on this trail, because you can use the term trail very loosely on some parts of the Ice Age.
Oh, yeah.
So, no, I'm excited. I'm excited for you to share those details.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. And I think again that you're 100% hit the nail on the head with that, that kind of struggle. And we heard that a lot, and I heard that a lot. Like, oh geez, if we had, if I had the life that you guys had, I could do stuff like that too. And it's like,
oh man, if only you got sponsorship dollars, right? You both quit your jobs. Every time someone says that, you should get like a check. so then it's true. Like every time they say that, like somewhere someone should just send you both money, like a check, so it's actually true. When people are like, oh, that would be I could do that too if I had your, the magic money genie that you both have. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, no.
It's like, yeah, like the day I quit my job, I had nothing else, and it was going to be, all right, well, let's do this Ice Age deal, and then we'll figure it out. And I happened to get extremely lucky in that my last day at my old job, I got contacted by somebody who I had worked with, 5 years prior, who had a great job that he thought I would be a good fit for. And, I explained to him, like, hey, I'm basically going to be out for the month of September. If you're cool with me starting in early October, like, yeah, let's have a conversation. But, so yeah, I can look at that and say I was extremely lucky. Annie is the type of person who likes to look at it, kind of for more of a fatalistic
Hell yes.
approach of, none of that would have happened if I had not just taken the leap and quit the job that I was hating and was making me miserable every day. And as soon as you do that, bam, another door opens up,
Yep.
but you have to take that leap first. And that leap is scary as fuck.
Yes, it is.
And a lot of people don't do it. And again, I am very willing to count myself in that camp in a lot of different places. Um, the Ice Age thing for me, obviously I didn't run the whole race. I have been very I think I have been almost unfairly recognized as like Annie and I are looked at as a team, you know, and on some level, of course, we are. But like Jason, the guy who had the record before Annie, he had two guys that worked with him from start to finish as well, that did all the same shit that I did,
Uh-huh.
and none of them, neither of those two guys are looked at as, like, oh, it was Jason and Robert and Tim, the two guys that helped him.
Uh-huh.
Nobody knows who those guys are. And I, for whatever reason, and maybe it's because I was kind of the voice of the whole thing, I get included in a lot with, like, oh yeah, Brian and Annie, and they did the Ice Age Trail and blah blah blah. It's like, fuck, man, I can show you my Strava from that time. That 3 weeks, total, I ran about 80 fucking miles.
You're like,
But
nope. I did not run it.
I did get a very valuable lesson out of it, and it was, kind of that shifting of priorities of, it's not all about making money and, oh, I've got to have this job and I've got to, do all that kind of stuff. And there is a lot more to life than sitting at a desk. And I think it's really easy for all of us to say that. And like, I'll be the first person to admit, with my new job, I'm still, working for a big ass bank doing financial shit that really has no impact on the world as far as, I'm not changing lives. I'm not saving anybody, like I have no delusions of my importance in the corporate world, but like, it doesn't drive me nuts. I've got freedom to do kind of what I want when I want for the most part. This morning I took my daughter to school and came home and spent another hour with Annie because she didn't have to go to work until 10. Went into work an hour later than I normally do. Nobody gives a fuck.
Yep.
Like,
But that hour,
it's
like,
one of those things where you have to, you have to find something that, even if it's not what you're passionate about, and I certainly am not passionate about corporate risk management. It at the very least, it allows me / us, the flexibility to, take a trip to Europe or to, send my daughter to a different school or that sort of thing.
yep.
And for right now, I can handle that. And there was a time at my previous job where I could handle that trade-off as well, where, again, it's a very simple transaction that we're all involved in with work. You're trading your time for money.
Yep.
And there gets to be a point where in a lot of people's lives, you can't make that trade-off anymore, or the trade-off is killing you.
Yeah.
And I hit that point and I took the leap, but there are so many people that just fucking refuse to take that leap. And it could be a job, it could be a relationship, it could be, whatever. When you find that thing that's making you miserable, you have to let it go, and you can't tolerate that kind of misery and negativity in your own life, because that's what builds up that contempt that we were talking about just a few minutes ago of, oh yeah, well, if I had your life, I could do this, and if I was connected like you are, I could do that. It's like, none of that shit happens by accident, Like, the reason we have all these connections is because Annie's really fucking good at making connections, like, yep. She has no problem emailing somebody and saying, hey, we're putting on a film festival. Would you be willing to donate a gift certificate or whatever?
Uh-huh.
And 9 times out of 10, those people email back and say, yeah, that kicks ass. Here you go. You can't be afraid to ask for shit,
Exactly. Well, and especially because she's asking for shit, and in return she understands like what she's doing has value. So that's
right.
It's so, what you're saying is so true. Like you've both worked your ass off, passionate, putting in the time, putting in the reps, and then not being afraid to talk about it and ask for things in return. Like that's, I'm all fired up right now. But
Me too.
so dude, we've already hit hour 40, and
Oh Jesus.
yeah, with commercials and everything. So it'll be close to 2, and that's about where the platform starts to get mad at me. So, dude, anything else you want to conclude on before we let people okay, go with your concluder, and then I'll talk ending
Okay.
question.
Yeah, I mean, again, I just want to rehammer that point, as far as giving up things that are not bringing value to your life. Again, whether that's a job, whether that's a relationship, whether that's, I mean, people have unhealthy relationships with parents, with siblings. If you have negativity in your life and you have taken steps to address it, you had that conversation with your mom about, hey, I can't stand the way you talk to me, and nothing changes. At a certain point, you have to be okay with letting that shit go, because nobody in this world deserves to have negative things in their lives. You talked a long time ago about how important it is, to be positive and not fall into the negativity traps. I struggle with it too, 100%. I struggle with it too. But if people take nothing else away from it, just take away the fact that when you have shit that's toxic in your life, you have to let it go. And then the other thing I'll throw in real quick is a plug for the Ice Age Trail, especially up by you guys. You have some really nice segments, but not too far away in places like Taylor County and Langlade County and places up that direction. They need serious help up there. And, down here in Milwaukee, down out in Madison, there's hundreds of people that are ready to go anytime there's a storm or anything like that. Up there's just not the people. And one of the reasons why I'm going to try and kind of put a nice blitz out on this book, is to try and raise awareness for that portion of the trail where they really need help, because it's maintained almost exclusively by retirees and people who are in their 60s and 70s and 80s. And it's not a nice thing to say, but 10 or 20 years from now, none of those people are going to be around.
Yep.
And it's going to be up to us to pick up that mantle that they're going to leave behind. And we got to get used to it. It's the time is coming, and Annie and I have some stuff in the works to try and raise more awareness to that area of the trail beyond just the book. I actually began working today with a couple of people about possibly putting on a race up there just to get people into that area.
Oh, nice.
And see it, because the trail is incredible, but it does need help, and it needs volunteers, and it needs somebody to come in and put on an event that raises, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, and we give that money right back to the people up there because they need it.
Yep.
So yeah, stuff like that is coming. But if you've got people in your area that want to go out on a Saturday and make a difference, consider the Ice Age Trail, and consider it up in your neck of the woods, because they need the help up there for sure. Fan breath.
Definitely, man. Oh, I love it. What we ended up talking about, it's been like a common theme on the podcast the last couple episodes, is like, the realizing we all have a choice. Obviously, maybe you can't do it right away. You can't quit your job. You've got financial financial obligations to you, your
yeah.
family. Like we've talked about that. You mentioned it, exchanging time for money, realizing where that cutoff is, but just being aware of where that cutoff is, and then start, like you've been talking about, start to make decisions and choices and habits that push you more towards that line where you're happy and healthy with the trade. So yeah, we've talked about that with physical therapists, with strength and conditioning coaches. Oh yeah, so it's cool to talk about it from the banker / part-time coach as well, or finance guy. How do you want me to label that?
Corporate finance would be better.
Corporate
I don't actually. I work for a
finance.
bank, but not in a bank.
Gotcha. So no man, that's awesome. Thanks for coming on
Yeah.
again, Brian. I've got Brian Runs Wisconsin. It's where people can follow you on the old Instagram.
Yes, indeed.
Brian Frain, Facebook. I've got the
Yes,
Running
sir.
Wanderer as your blog. They could go back and read all those if they want to relive the Ice Age Trail journey from like where I just annoyed the hell out of everyone every day at the gym. Like, are you like everyone else is talking about sport, like the usual typical things that happen in fall that I usually don't follow, and here I am like reading your blog posts and talking about the Ice Age Trail trek, because to me that was like, this is happening. These are like real people who quit their fucking jobs and are taking on this crazy challenge. So if they want to go back and relive it, I might have to as well. But yeah, and then
we would like to go back and relive it as well, just for the record.
Oh hell yeah. When's the book coming out? Do we have a date? Do we have an idea?
I am hoping for, I would say, probably like early to mid July, but that's going to hinge a lot on how long it takes to get it edited and that sort of thing.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I'm hoping like within the next month or two. Originally, my goal were Annie and I are putting on a film festival.
Yeah, I saw that
here in Milwaukee.
Is there a website for that?
A Global link? Running Day. It's just on Facebook. It's MKE Running Fest. Yeah, so we're doing that on Global Running Day, and so I was kind of hoping to like have it ready to launch on that day, but I think that's going to be a little too tight because that's like June 5th or June 6th, and I'm not sure I would be able to get it edited and published and have copies shipped back to my house in 2 weeks.
Damn it, Brian! Get it done.
What?
Get it done. I want to read it. This is my own. Obviously, for my own selfish reasons. I'm just finding the link for that and putting it in the show notes. Well, it's cool, man. I'm obviously gonna annoy you after I'm done recording on how the hell do I get a copy of those 2 chapters. But for everyone else listening, thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. And yeah, get out on the Ice Age Trail. Enjoy some outdoor recreation. I've got a exciting list of, I call it wrecked training, that I want to release here through the website. Just some ways that I've created minimalist at-home training programs for people that enjoy getting outside to kind of bulletproof themselves. So I'll be
awesome.
Getting you motivate me to get on that and start releasing that as well. So I appreciate that. But yeah, right. Dude, Ice Age Trail for everyone at home. Get out there, enjoy it, volunteer, help get those trails maintained. I think that's it for everybody, right? Sounds good.
Yeah. Thanks, Bill.